Hey everybody, we are the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Erin.
I'm Dr. Kristen.
Welcome to our third installment of the made-up Danish Heritage Month we created so that we could talk about Dr. Kristen's Danish heritage. Up today, we have a non-hyperbolic, quite literal, transformational film called Finding Hygge, which Dr. Kristen found online and purchased for $15
On Vimeo.
through our Vimeo account, y'all. Worth every penny. It was a 2018 film done by a collective group of American filmmakers. And for those of you that don't know what Hygge is, I didn't either before I started this. It is a cultural concept in Denmark that it has similarities in other Nordic countries. That's really like kind of a philosophy of life. And throughout the whole documentary, different people struggle to explain what it is. And that's, I think, okay, because not everything necessarily should have an English translation. But it is this idea that you cultivate experiences, connectivity with others, comfort and safety. The word safety was mentioned several times, whatever safety means to you. It's poorly translated into like a cozy aesthetic when it is marketed and sold in Western areas, but it goes beyond that to kind of an intentional, purposeful life, connecting with yourself, with others, learning to slow down, learning to, be present with yourself sometimes on your own and with others also importantly. And the film takes an hour and a half journey through people from all different walks of life who are on their own journey to find Hygge in Denmark, in Vail, Colorado, which made me very, very happy as a native Coloradan, expats and Danes alike, and what Hygge looks like for them in all these different walks of life. And we loved it. We did not know just how Danish Dr. Kristen was. And she can talk more about how she has literally been practicing embodying her entire life. She didn't know it until this documentary. But yeah, we meet just fantastic humans. It's a very philosophical documentary. In a way that's non-judgmental, which we like. It gets into a little bit the commercialization of Hygge, which has happened more recently in the last 5 years, and the marketing of it, which is very similar to the way yoga has been westernized and commercialized. And so the documentary is honest about some of the problems and difficulties of Hygge, the downside of commercializing it. And there's a great line from a lovely Danish man who owns the Hygge Life shop in Vail that he just says, like buying a candle is, you can't buy Hygge. Like buying a candle is not buying Hygge, but you can buy things that will help you find Hygge in yourself. But you can't buy it. You can't buy a blanket and say, oh, my room is now Hygge. No, because it's a life philosophy and it's a perspective and worldview and way that you build relationships. So you have to do all of that work too. And it might mean that you buy a nice candle or you build a fireplace. Great. It might mean that you buy a bicycle. It might mean, like for Dr. Kristen said offline, you go to Broadway shows because that's how you find community and build relationships. So there were some really interesting parts. I appreciated that towards the end, they spent kind of picking apart some aspects of Hygge in Danish culture, that it can be a focus on small groups of people that you know really well. And so it can be challenging for outsiders. It's not as welcoming to outsiders as some Danes kind of believed. And they talk about, a series of news stories about refugees from various crises, and how they were and weren't treated. And the time we spend with Hans and the boundless kitchen at the end is really kind of like how can we expand Hygge to be all of this and all people all the time in all places? And so, yeah, what would you like to talk about, Dr. Kristen? I know I just rambled my way through that summary, but it's such a rich film. We could talk about it for days.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, there's a couple things I want to pick up on about Danish culture that really makes sense in this puzzle. So like Denmark is the country that is super egalitarian, values Hygge, and they're still the country that in 2006 offended the entire Muslim world with a cartoon about Muhammad in a newspaper that was really offensive and terrible. Mm-hmm. So there are a bunch of contradictions. Because they're so egalitarian, like a lot of expats get really frustrated there because there's like no decisions are ever made. Like, you know, there's jokes around how people will debate for literally 9 months who's going to go and get a bagel, because if you don't have consensus, then it doesn't really work. So like there's a lot of, you know, it's really easy to deify Denmark in some ways because it seems so picturesque. And I love Denmark. I think I said this in another video, like I considered moving there at one point. And I'm terrible with languages, and they also just a couple other like government policies. Like it wouldn't be feasible for me to do that. But man, I've been close.
Yeah, like I was on board with that as soon, like 20 minutes in, I messaged her and I was like, when are we going to Denmark? Right now.
As soon as it is safe to.
We are going to take the itinerary of this film.
Stop it. So like that, and then hanging out with my family.
Yeah, exactly. Legoland, Tivoli, your family, and the itinerary of this film.
Exactly. There's a couple other things that I think is really, really interesting. So when I think of Denmark, I think of it as efficient but intentional. So it's not fast paced. It's not super hurried. I don't, when I'm there, ever feel like everybody is rushing to something, but absolutely every train runs on time. Everything is done in an order. Everything is done professionally. Everything is done in a very specific way, but it doesn't feel like America. It just doesn't feel like the same rushedness. And like, I get that vibe in the rest of Scandinavia as well as I've traveled throughout it, that it is efficient, but like slow in a way. Yeah. It's efficient, but calm.
Yeah, I felt like there was certainly some of that in Amsterdam.
Yes, I think so too. Like the efficiency, but the calmness. Yeah. Like it'll be okay. We'll all get there, but like, let's make sure we're respecting each other's time. So what it really comes down to, and I had a friend of mine who lived in Copenhagen for a while explain this to me once, is that because her theory as to why time is so valued in Danish culture is that you only get the sun for so many months a year. And especially not necessarily in Copenhagen, but especially in Jutland, and then like in Jutland, depending on how you pronounce it. And then in like the northern parts of Norway, like my husband has a friend that doesn't leave her house for 4 months every year because there's so much snow and so much dark. And so you really understand the passage of time in a completely different way. You understand the value of in-person relationships in a different way, because there are a lot more boundaries set up than you can surmount. And it's just a different rhythm to the planet when you live somewhere that steals days from you. And I think that really shows in that I have been, for as long as I can exist and remember, somebody who believes you build larger tables the minute the table is full. I was very, very famous at college for always wanting to sit at the round tables in the cafeteria because you can always fit another chair at a round table. I hated the long tables where there was a hierarchy of conversation. I still hate long tables. I like everyone to be together as much as possible. And I try to create intentional spaces where that can happen for people, whether that is online or that is in person. The way I met Dr. The way I got really close with Erin is that she and I took a lot like intentional time together in a group of people I grabbed to go to a pub quiz.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, and we made that commitment to, I mean, not all of us could be there all the time, but we made that commitment every Monday night at 9 to like head on over to the Empire and participate in quiz. And we have so many wonderful memories. And some of those people are our best friends to this day.
And that's Hygge. Like that's Hygge.
Like that's what we did. And like we just didn't have a word for it. But yeah, and like for me too, what I speaking as your best friend, what you have done, the importance of food as well is such a big part of who you are and always has been. And I know it's a huge part of the way you express and experience your faith. But I think it's also a huge part of your Danish. That like I didn't realize until I watched this film, and then I was like, oh wow.
It was so funny because I was thinking like every time I go visit my cousins, like we make food together. Like the meal is never ready when I show up to their house. The meal is always like part of preparing it together. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so Danish.
You're so Danish. Yeah, and just like the way, especially the way Hans was talking about, who's a chef and an artist that is originally Dutch, but now lives in a small town in Denmark, and we meet him and his relationship with a local chef there to build this boundless kitchen, which is this base, like they grow food and they cook big meals for people and they invite as many people as they can to these big tables. And it's about building community through food and conversation and hygge. And I was like, oh my God, it's Kristen.
And next week, we're going to watch a documentary about the world's best restaurant called Numa, which is in Copenhagen. And one of the things that Numa did, that the chef there, ironically, who's not Danish, is an immigrant from Macedonia, and we'll meet him next week. In his conversation, essentially, he talks about hygge, and he doesn't even use that word, but he's also very much talking about hygge. Talks about that a huge part of that is the Danish food, like the Nordic kitchen that has been around since like 2006, 2007, is a lot about getting seasonal food from the land. Mm-hmm. So it all still connects back to, like, I was reading a book that talked about how for the 80s and 90s, Danes were exporting all of the best of all of their agricultural products. So like Europeans were getting the best Danish butter that you could possibly get, and they were eating margarine that they imported from England. And so there's been a relationship of coming back as well, and food re-entering the definition of hygge within Denmark. 20 years ago, food was not part of it. And so it has become part of it. And I think around the world, we are becoming more understanding of food and planet and body. So I'm fascinated to watch that happen with the way that people express hygge as well.
Yeah, and I think too, just as you were talking, you know, and the documentary does a great job of saying the Danes don't have the market on hygge. We just have a word for it. Our friend Mike at the Happiness Institute wrote the book, the littlest book on hygge or whatever, the little book on hygge that it kind of launched hygge internationally. But there's lots of parallels in different cultures. And just while you were talking there, this idea of relatedness and relations, which is hugely popular, a huge part of Native and Indigenous cultures around the world, but a lot of Native tribes and nations on the land of the United States. And they talk about, you know, there's a great podcast for those of you that are interested called All My Relations, and the explanation of what those relationships are. And it's my relationship to the food, to the land. I am a steward of the land. It is my job to cultivate that relationship, and my relations with others, other animals, other humans, all living creatures. It, like, part of that is fostering those relationships and cultivating those relationships. And that is hygge. It's just called relations in a different language and in a different concept. And, you know, I'm sure in each of those indigenous languages, they have words for that, that express that idea. So I think for me, it's just, you know, it's great to see that concept in a Danish way. And there are some things that are very uniquely Danish about it, and that come about because of the welfare state and the social welfare programs that they have set up that contribute to that. But yeah, it was deeply Danish while also universal, which we love to see as a way to explore cultures.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for after all these times when we do a travel video to Denmark and I introduce Dr. Aaron to my homeland.
We will have the good doctors go traveling.
Go Nordic. Yeah, it'll be great.
And we're gonna go, if you end up watching Finding Hygge, we're going to the inn in Jutland, run by Gary Dawson, who was a mensch.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to shake his hand and be like, hello, Gary. You've got it on, my friend. And all the other places. So watch us go live touring YouTube videos. It'll be happening.
It will definitely be happening, because that is definitely part of how we create and cultivate our hygge together.
Yeah, we make a lot of memories and are present with each other and experience that joy through traveling and experiencing new things and sharing our history and heritage with each other, which is also a big part of who we are.
For sure. And food and booze. So those things are big parts of how we do hygge. I just need to call a spade here. Some of our very best conversations have been after like 3 or 4 hours of sitting in one place, and we finally get around to saying the thing we've been meaning to say for 6 months. And like
too many. Like, what did I just find the other day? This is going to be tangential, but we'll share this story with you. I was redoing my bookshelves here as I built this one. And I found I had the book that I bought from the Van Gogh Museum.
Van Gogh Museum, yeah.
We were in Amsterdam. But I had stuffed all of these little tickets. I collect many things, YouTube viewers. I collect ticket stubs from museums and bits and bobs from restaurants and stuff. And you would think I would make scrapbooks, but I haven't. They're just in bags and in the attic. But I keep them for the memories that they bring me. And I found... I took the little like card from that restaurant in Amsterdam we went to.
So the one with the wagon wheel, the wagon wheel chandelier.
That was one of our first like really great meals over booze and food. So I was thinking about that, and then the place in Bruges. That like literally the entire town of Bruges closed from like 3 to 5, and we were like, we're here for a day, we need to eat dinner, where are we gonna go? And we found this like beer emporium.
That's the one I lost my scarf at, because that ate my scarf. Yeah,
it was literally a Bible of beer, and we just spent the afternoon tasting beer and having conversations, and that's what we do. So I look forward to doing that in Denmark with you soon, my friend.
Yes,
but please watch Finding Hygge. Please give these people money and think about what Finding Hygge looks like for you, and try and practice that as often as you can, because that's certainly intentions to live by, and it's how we frame our lives. We just didn't know it.
I always love getting new words for things in my soul. Yeah. So on that note, we're going to leave you for this week, and we'll see you next week to talk more about food.
I'm excited.
Bye,
everybody.